Well, guys, we're back. I hope you guys stayed warm through the little blizzard we had there, or whatever happened in your area. We're working on the '04 Cinco. It's a Kia for those of you that don't know what a Cinco is. It's a '04 Kia Rio Cinco. Why are we working on it today? Well, I'll tell you why. At the beginning of this mess, probably about 2 Mondays ago, I guess, wife went to drive to work. She said her pedal felt weird on the brakes. Well, she drove home, made it home okay, didn't crash or nothing. Came outside and found the master cylinder was empty. Well, this was a New York car, as I probably mentioned about a million times before. So New York cars, because they use a heavy concentration of salt, rotted out the fuel lines and rotted out the brake lines. Well, I just got underneath the car to see how it was looking, and they've replaced the brake lines once before, but they did scab-on jobs. And if you don't know what a scab-on job is, that's where one continuous brake line becomes several smaller brake lines. Some areas it's legal, but I don't like it and I don't believe in it, so we're getting rid of it. Also, she had a full tank of gas, and I know her fuel line's got to be changed because it's pretty rough. And she drove 12.6 miles according to the trip odometer and used a half a tank of gas. That's not possible with this car. This car can go a long time on a tank of gas. So I checked her fuel lines, and sure enough, she's got a small hole in the back, so we're gonna have to pull the fuel line off. One of the reasons it brings us here today, I'm gonna show you how these lines route, in case you're curious. All right. Okay, these two big lines right here behind the brake booster, those are your fuel lines. Those fuel lines go along the firewall. One goes to a vent tank and the other one goes to your fuel rail. I did notice she was having a hard time with it running, so I'm pretty much sure 100% that her fuel line's no good. So in order to get the fuel line off the firewall, we got to pull the brake booster. You could ask yourself, why don't we just take the cowl off and pull the wiper motor? I ain't messing with all that. Probably would be a better way to do it, but because we're working on the brakes, it's just easier if we just unbolt the brake booster and slide it forward so we can get the lines out. Since the vapor line, which is this one right here, is basically sandwiched between the firewall and the booster. So to get to that, we need to get the master cylinder off. So that's where we're going to start. We're going to take these two lines off. I've already taken my pictures of where they go. As long as you don't take them off the proportioning valve, you'll be fine. The proportioning valve is buried underneath the back there, and we'll get to that later. So being that this has practically no brake fluid left in it, we're going to go ahead and pull those lines off. These are, if I remember right, those are 10s. I've taken this apart before. Back in New York when we got the car, I had to do brakes on it before we could bring it home. I got my line wrench right here. I think it's a 10. Yeah, it's a 10. All right. So let's go ahead and get these lines broke free here. It's been a minute, so I don't know if they're going to come off right away. Had to have these wrenches to get the thing apart. All right, so let's see. I need to get some room, so we're going to take this hose assembly off net first. See, we got a 10, 10, and we got a 10 here. We'll go ahead and put that on our ratchet and zip those off real quick. Not the way I wanted to start my year, guys, but you know, it's going to get better. I got a couple more jobs we got to do this year, so we're going to get them done too. Let's get this. Yeah, this car's got to come apart. I do know where a donor car is for this. If I decide to go over there and get the lines off of it. But we'll make that determination in a little while after we get to the scene of the crime, so to speak. Get our piece off. This car. I know nothing of Kias, by the way. I haven't seen enough of them. And there's not enough service information on them for me to know anything about them. Closest thing I can find to this car is like a Hyundai Accent. And even that's different. So I don't know. But I'm just learning along with you. Oh, looks like we got some condensation in our oil. Not enough to cause concern. If you see little bits of chocolate milk on your oil cap, and you see a little bit like around the edge of your oil, and you live in a humid climate like I do, don't pay attention to that, because that's just condensation. You get that a lot in these humid climates. So don't panic too badly if you see that. It's just because we get a lot of water around here, so you're going to get a little bit of water in there. The only time you need to be concerned is if you drain your oil and do your oil change and it does that, or if you're having overheating issues and you find that. But if it doesn't overheat and you don't find a lot of it in your oil, don't worry about it. You'll be just fine. So far, everything's a 10mm on this car, which is fine because, you know, it's a little car. You don't need big, massive bolts on your little car. This is our snorkel tube. All this stuff will go in the trunk, so don't worry about it too much. All right, now we got all this space. We can get in here and push this. This is your throttle cable right here that I'm pushing down on. We just got to get that out of the way so we can get these lines loose. Here they go. Get a wrench in there so we can get a good grab on it. I'm half tempted to change these brake lines out because they are chowdered. I mean, yeah, you can still get a wrench on it, but look how far over I got to go to get the wrench on it. We're going to loosen up our battery, and we're going to move our battery over a little bit so I get some more room. I'm going to try not to disconnect the battery because this car's got its monitors set, and I don't want to have to go through and drive it forever to reset the monitors. Even though it's the monitor for the evap hasn't set on this car. I think it's because that line's rotted out, so the car's not getting the proper signal. So, oh, the other thing, this used to be my mother's car. If you're curious how much I paid for this car, it was in trade. She called me up one day and she says, I need a truck. I think I've told the story before, but if you're new to the channel, here's the story. Mother calls me up, she says, I love my car, but I can't do a lot with it. She lives on 4.5 acres up in New York. So you could basically say she has a little farm up there. So she said, I want a truck. I'm like, okay, fine, I'll find you a truck. Found her this beautiful 88 Dodge Dakota. 149,000 on it. Guy wanted 500 bucks. Had engine problems, so we had to have it towed home. All right, well, right about this time, now it looks like we're gonna have to disconnect the battery after all, because unfortunately I can't get the battery to come out with the cables like that, so we're gonna have to unplug the battery. Which means we're back to setting monitors. which is fine because, you know, this car sets its monitors pretty easily. Anyway, so towed truck home, redid the 3.9 that was in it, had to do freeze plugs in the heads. We did new head gaskets, changed thermostat in it, belts, hoses, all that. Spent $2,000 front to back on that truck, purchasing it, putting it together, and then I drove it all the way to New York on the 3-speed that it came in. Love that truck. Well, when my mother first got this car, it was in excellent condition, but it had brake problems. Kind of ironic, isn't it? Had brake problems. It wouldn't stop. Push the brake pedal, goes to the floor. So the shop or the car lot that she got the car from, by the way, she paid $3,300 for this car, and it was like almost brand new looking. I get it, and it looks like it'd been through a tornado or two. She'd only had the car for, not very long. Not very long at all. Yeah, I've had this off before. So when I got the car, first thing I had to do is change the transmission sensor, which sits down there. Not a big deal, pretty easy to do. Had that done in the morning, not too bad. Well, driving it around, and of course it's grinding because, you know, she didn't keep up on the maintenance. Because my mother, she was married to a mechanic. So my dad, he was a mechanic. So she basically, for 30 some years, just said, well, you know, he'll take care of it. Hell, he didn't even want to work on his own stuff. So anyway, I drove the truck up there, got this car. The day before we leave to come back from New York, I get a strong smell of gas coming from the back of the car. Now, mind you, I've driven this car all over the place at this point, and I've deemed it a good car. You know, it's a decent car. We can, you know, do some stuff with it. So I figured, why not? You know, we'll be fine. Smell the gas. I'm going, oh, great. No idea what's causing it. She drove it fine, did everything okay. So we're driving home. Had to drive home with the windows down, screaming down the highway. Of course, it's 90 degrees outside. So, you know. Oh, by the way, this is a pick. You take your pick, and you stick it down inside that slot, and you lift up on it, and you pull that wire off. We get home, and we don't even have the car on the road 2 weeks, the transmission goes up. So then we get a hold of the worst transmission shop in Southwest Indiana, which is Amco over in Evansville. If you've ever been to the area and you need transmission work, do not go there. Trust me on that. They will screw you 9 ways to Sunday, and then they will give you the bag and tell you to go do it again. They were the worst shop in Southwest Indiana, okay? No joke. A lot of people complain about them, and I can join them. So, it spends almost an entire year over there before we even get it back. Then when we do get it back, that's a 12. It's still not right. And they soak us for $2,300. So then I call up this other transmission shop, this one I send all my cars to now, called Rideouts over there in Evansville. Been in the business over 60 years, they said. They do it all. Took this transmission over there, and the only thing they had to do was drop the valve body out of the bottom of the transmission and change a piece of wiring about maybe 4 feet long that told the computer when to shift. That's all they had to do to it. Charged me $860 to do that. I mean, they're good, but they're pricey. good, but they're pricey. So, you know, that's just how it goes. So then we get the car home and we're driving it, and every once in a while I got to add transmission fluid to it because this car uses a cork gasket and it doesn't want to seal, and then it leaks through the it leaks past the bolts. So later in the year we're going to get underneath it and we're going to get under there and we're going to use some thread seal, and we're going to seal up those threads on those bolts. I mean, it seems to work okay on my Buick for that fuel line, so. Okay, so if you've just joined us, we're taking the car apart so we can gain access to the fuel lines, and we'll have a better access to the brake lines that run underneath here. So if you've just joined us, welcome. We got some housekeeping to do later. Not part of this video, it'll be a different video. All right, there's your master cylinder. We're going to set this just like this because, see, we're good. My concern, though, is that I've got a little bit of wet down here. So I kind of wonder if maybe that seal ruptured because of the cold. Don't know. We will find out, though. All right, so that we don't lose our hardware, we're going to put our hardware back on our studs. That way we don't lose our hardware, because it's real easy to confuse this stuff if you don't know. If you're not paying attention to what you're doing and you don't put your hardware back where it belongs. So always put your hardware back where it belongs. Now as far as these lines go, I think they'll be just fine, because we just got to unbolt it from underneath you got to unbolt the master cylinder from under the dashboard, which I'm going to do off camera because it's really hard to get to. And then I'll pull the master cylinder off. And then after we get the master cylinder off, I can show you what we're going to do next. Gotta pull this power brake line here. That's our vacuum for our power brakes. Just kind of rock it back and forth like that, and it should turn right off. Yeah. Usually these don't give you too much trouble. Yeah, and it goes into a vacuum enhancer down here, so you want to kind of... Oh, I forgot to put the clamp back on that last time I was in here. Yeah, I'm surprised that's not a vacuum leak. Alright, now we got to get this upper half off here. This is where your air filter lives. There's a strong smell of gas coming from here, so I'm pretty sure we're going to find our problem. Take our baffle top off. Set it over here. Those are, I think, 10s. And then there's two bolts in the back that you can't see. No, these are 12s. Alright. You want to have a magnet nearby too to grab those nuts. You have to take this off so you can get to that rail back there. Save your hardware, put it somewhere where you're going to remember where it goes. I put mine in the top of the air baffle. So. Do that, catch it with your magnet and you won't lose it. I've been reading your comments over the holidays, and by the way, thank you for your comments. I appreciate everyone you send. Although I do have to address a few things that I will do in another video. But a couple of you guys suggested the magnet technique, and I've been using the magnet technique for years. When I was a high school student back in Utah, I learned of the magnet technique. And I'll tell you what, I've never looked back. because that magnet, I'll tell you, it is something else. I am so happy that, I forget who it was that told me about it first, but somebody in my youth told me about that. And I'm like, oh, I think it might have been my shop teacher. Oh no, I gotta go get a 12mm ratchet so I can get that bolt out, and then we can get this manifold top off. So I'll be right back, folks. Alright, I grabbed one of these, and I grabbed the flex head in case we can expedite this a little faster. There's a bolt back here on the corner. It's a mount bolt. You got to get to it with a wrench. You can't get at it with a ratchet because there's not enough room back here. There's one here, and then there's one let's see, maybe I should be going the other way with this. Get this out to a certain point, and then you can get on it with your fingers and spin it out. If you watch the video where I changed the purge valve on this car, you'll see that I had to take this air cleaner off to get that purge valve out. Of course, back in those days, I didn't have this awesome little flex head right here. I had to have this flex head set for a Cadillac that I work on from time to time, which is going to be in another video coming up soon. We'll talk about that when the time comes. Pull this bolt out right here. See, there's one bolt, and you got another one, and then you got another one back over here. Let's see, where did it go? Right here. It's hard to get to once you have small hands. You'll see this bolt down here. You gotta follow it up, make sure that it connects to the, there it is right there. It's right there on the back of this box, right here. Now we can pick up I don't recall there being, oh, yep, we got to unhook the rubber hose that goes around the throttle body. See, I'll show you over here. Yeah, we got to, let's see if I can set my camera. There we go. Over here we got a hose clamp right there we got to get loose. Should have done that when I was over there. We'll get it now. And then this thing should pick up and off. I think there's this tube right here on the valve cover we got to unhook. And then that air baffle comes off and we can get to the firewall. There's quite a bit of work that needs to go into this car in order to get to the part we're trying to fix. See how it was picking up on that right there? We also have a clamp, or we have a, this is your mass airflow sensor. There's supposed to be a hook, the hook set together, but I lost the hook. I doubt I'll ever find it. We got to pull, I think just this one. If I remember from last time I did this job. Just got to pull this, pull this clamp back, and we can just pull that line off the throttle there, and then we got to grab it and pick up on it like that. And just got to make sure you get it off the studs on the back, which are a little bit of a challenge. There's a little sleeve that sits inside there. And then we've got And we got something holding this on here. So what is it? Oh, okay. That goes inside this little hook right here. So here's that's your air intake for your Kia. Alright, we got little brass grommets that stay on down here. Now you can see the fuel line. Alright, so we're going to pull. Alright, so now we got to get in the car. Down here is our proportioning valve for our brakes that we got to get to. Might just go ahead and we'll pull this vacuum assembly out too while we're in here. Get me some extra room. Let me see, does that just fit into that? Does that go into the back of that? How does that go? Oh, that goes into a grommet on the back of the throttle. So if I unhook that vacuum, I should be able to move that to the side and not have to unplug it. I'm trying to do as little as possible on this car because I don't understand it. Alright, so let's see, we gotta move our throttle, or we need to get a clip for that. Next time we're out at the junkyard, we need to get a clip for that. Alright, so let's see. Oh, that's the PCV valve. That's an odd looking thing. So if I undo it right there, I can pick that whole unit up, and then this whole hose will slide up and out of the way. Let's try that. Let's go get a 10mm wrench and take that loose. Alright. Let's go ahead and get this loose. You can do this with a stubby 10 if you've got one, or a flex head 10. I have both. I have a flex head or a stubby that's a ratcheting wrench that we use on that Cadillac. Let me go grab that real quick and then we'll make quick work of this. Let me see if I can get a midget 10 down in there on a ratchet. Sometimes that works when you don't have room to get your wrench down in there. Just take a socket down in there. And that'll work. There we go. Now I can take this top off. Maybe. This is more like a carburetor than a throttle body. Oh my goodness. This is a really janky setup. Let's see if we can get a screwdriver and pry up on that a little bit, make that come up a little bit better. There we go. Got that off. Now we can move this to the side. We gotta get it past these. Oh, we lost our clamp. Pick our clamp back up. And pull this down and away. See that? Now get to our brake lines. And you set that down there. Of course, that's braided. That's a formed hose, which probably needs to be replaced. We'll do that if we get a vacuum leak. All right, so let me show you what we got here. All right, this is your proportioning valve. The lines that go to the master cylinder are these two lines here. Okay, you got this line right here that my finger is on that goes to the right front wheel over there. This one over in the corner goes to the left front tire here. These down here, they go to the right rear and the left rear wheel. So it's kind of like GM, except unlike GM, where if you blow out the back, the fronts take over and you still have a brake. When you blow out the backs on this car, you have no brakes. So all this is just a divider. Now you can take this off, get the lines off of it, or you can do like we're going to do. We're going to pull this brake booster off now, and we're going to try to get these lines loose and get them off the proportioning valve. Once we've got that done, we'll be in good shape. Now it looks like somebody at one time when they did this job, they cut the line going to the left rear wheel, because I think it was rotted, being a New York car. But I found a whole lot of them unions under there. So we may have to take the throttle body off, set it to the side. I don't even know how that comes off. In that case, we'll need to get a throttle body gasket. And the only time I would take the throttle body off is if I've got to pull this off the firewall because the lines won't come off. So I'm going to get under the dashboard and get this brake booster pulled. I'll be right back. There's not enough room for me to film under there, so there's no way I can show you how it goes, but I'll bring you back as I'm getting ready to pull it off the car. Okay, it's time to bring the people in and show you what I did. Getting this brake booster out is a lot more work than really is necessary, to be honest with you. As you can see, we had to drop our steering column. It has two big bolts that go in the top here. You got to get the cover off, which is sitting over there. All right, and then if you look in the back, probably not a good view. Let me get you down here where you can see better. All right, right back in there, you've got your bolts. You've also got your pin you got to pull for your brakes. So you got two bolts on the left side here, which you can get to without having to drop the column. Then the two bolts on the right, which you can't really see very well because there's a wire in the way. There's two more bolts on the other side of the steering column. There's one of them right there. And we move that cable out of the way. This is our... Alright. So there's another bolt under steering columns right here. And you got two bolts over on this side you got to pull. And then you got a pin, which is just your standard pin. Just grab that with a pair of needle nose and pull that right out of there. And then that's it. Now, make sure you, okay, the nuts, they are 12 millimeter, and don't use a ratcheting wrench on them because you'll end up rounding them off. Okay, so let's zoom in a little bit here so you can get a little bit better. Well, trying to zoom in with gloves on and it's just not working. There we go. Alright. Now I'm going to grab that booster and I'm just going to pull it off. You want to wiggle it to get it broke free, especially if it's been on there for a while. And then after we get the brake booster off, we'll take a look at our real estate and see if we need to take anything else off to get to what we got to get done here. So grab it from the bottom, grab it from the top, and just kind of pull it off. Comes off pretty easy. There we go. Here it comes. A little bit of negotiation. We have our booster. And that's what your Kia booster looks like. Try not to screw up that gasket. That prevents you getting cold feet while you're driving. Okay? Don't adjust these either. Do not touch this at all. Leave it alone. I know there's about 6 of you out there that thinks they're going to adjust that and you're going to get better brakes. No, you're going to cause yourself problems, so don't even go there. So, that's our stern moment of the day, folks. Alright, now we got a big gaping hole in our firewall. But, let's move this brake cable, this battery cable out of the way. Alright, so here's our fuel lines. That's why we had to take the booster off. Because we got our lines that are trapped up inside here. Now to get the lines off the body, there's a bunch of these little clips. See, the other thing we have access to is our brake lines down here. Because we've got brake lines we got to get to. And there's a nut down there that holds the lines to the car. We got to take that nut loose. And we got 2 nuts up here that take this bracketry loose. This car hasn't ran in a while, and it's what they call on-demand pressure. So we don't have to worry about kicking the key on and doing all that. Because if I push that line in over there, I will get just a tiny little bit of gas, if any. But then our line will be free. So our brake lines go down through here too. The line they cut goes down through there. So it looks like they cut the other line too, because I got another line that comes up and goes up. Nope, that one's not cut. It's rusty like crazy though, but it's not cut. It probably needs to come out. Alright, so let's see, let's start getting some lines loose now. We're going to start off by taking that fuel line loose over there, which is just going to be, those are push and pulls. Those are the Japanese version of the push and pull. And there's one on this end, and then there's one on the tank side. The tank actually has a short rubber line that comes off the fuel pump. So you don't have to take the back seat out, take the hose off. You just crawl up under there and disconnect it. So these come apart by pushing down right here on this tab. So you're going to push down on that tab, and then you're going to pull back. I believe that's how that comes apart. So let me get a screwdriver. It might be the other way where you got to push. I don't know. We're going to figure it out. Alright, so let's see what we can do here. Let's see if we can get these lines off. This one down here is just your standard clamp. This is a vapor tube. So you got to push like that, and then as you push, you're supposed to be able to pull back. Unless this is one of them that you got to push both sides together, because you got another one down here. There we go. See that? That's how that comes apart. And you just let the line, well, you'll be able to move the line in a minute. So there's not much fuel in it because it's on demand, so. Alright, so let's go ahead. We'll take off that nut and that nut. We got to pull that clamp real quick, so we'll pull that clamp. Then we'll get this vapor line off for the vapor tank. And then after we get the vapor tank line off, we got to pull some nuts off that holds this together. Alright, we got to rotate our fuel line around here so we can get it up That goes to the fuel rail, so we gotta be very careful because this is a plastic tube. This was actually a recall item because apparently these get brittle and break. I don't know how the hell they would get brittle to break, but you know. And we'll scoot this back. Okay. We might change this clamp because this clamp looks like it wants to come apart on me. It's not performing up to its standards. I don't like these clamps. Yeah, we're going to change this clamp out. Yeah, we're going to change that clamp out when we get ready to put this back together. Largely in part to the fact I hate them clamps. I hate those things. Those things, they work great in assembly, but when you have to actually take them apart to fix the car, they're just a big flaming pile of garbage. So, I don't like them. We're not going to use them. I'm going to get just a regular worm clamp on it. Looks like we might have to change this hose right here. This hose here, it looks like it's got some problems. I know it's not wanting to come off this line right here, though. Oh, crap. Do we cut it? Or do we try to save it? I'm going to try to save it. Get the pick in here. Maybe we can break this loose and it'll come off. There we go. There we go. That's got a barb on the end. Ain't that lovely? Alright, so we got the fuel lines disconnected. Let's see what we can do about getting them off the car. Those look like 10s. Let's see, we got a 10mm skinny wrench here. Let's see if we can get that in there. Yep, they're 10s. Let's see if we can get them to... Yeah, we can ratchet wrench them suckers out. Alright, and then we've got clips over here we got to negotiate. We got to, down here we got a connector we got to take loose. I'll get that with a wrench. Now, this thing's got 4, and you'll see them when we get under the car. There's 4 attachments that go along the driver's side of the frame rail. Each one's held in by, I believe, a 10mm bolt. So, I guess the theory is you can unbolt it from the body and drop the line down. Which, when we get underneath the car, I'll show you what I'm talking about. We got a nut. If you're looking at your rusty pile of garbage here, which I'm doing, right where my finger's pointing, there's a 10mm nut down there. You got to get that loose. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my ratcheting wrench and we're going to get our flexi socket on there and we're going to knock these out real quick. By the way, if you're curious as to what this big long monster is called, and they get longer, us in the industry call these the Ford bell housing bolt removal tool. And what you have to do is you have to take every extension you own, which is basically this, and you take every extension you own, you put it together along with the socket that you need. You stand at the back wheels of the truck or the car or whatever you're working on, and that's how you get your bolts out of your bell housing on your Ford. So if you ever hear anybody mention the Ford bell housing bolt removal tool, that's what they're talking about. I believe Dodge does that too. I've never taken a transmission out of a Dodge, but my understanding is you have to do the same thing on a Dodge. So, a little useless information for you there. It might be useful if you work in a shop and somebody asks you to go get that. See, these lines have been out before because usually those bolts are in there, or those nuts are in there pretty tight. By the way, while we're on the topic of line removal, let me explain a couple things to you. There is a difference between a line and a hose. Lines are metal or plastic, or nylon. I guess they're called nylon hose lines. Hoses are rubber. Lines are also known in some industries and service information as pipes. So if you see pipes anywhere in the service information, they're talking about lines. Just in case you're curious there. Just in case you're curious, that's what they're talking about. When you see something in the service information about like fuel pipe would be like this here. Fuel filler pipe. That's another good one that they like to do. GM likes to use that word a lot in their terminology. I don't know what Kia does, because apparently Kias are supposed to live forever. So, you tell me that's not a 10. Oh, we got one of those situations, folks. Let me figure out how we're going to accomplish this. Grab this. Starting to get dark again. We've been on this car, or I've been on this car, almost 2 hours. That's not a 12. Or if it is, it's a rusty 12. And we might have to go after that with a wrench. Or let's try a 13 socket. Oh, that's a 10. Alright, I went and got my brand new can of Croil. I've seen a lot of it on the YouTube. There's a couple shops that swear by it, and there's a couple swear at it, but you know. It smells like pine sol. So apparently people like to smell pine sol. So we're gonna put some on that there nut down there. Let that sit for a second. Get it on the front of the threads too, that way we got some a little bit of lubricity there. And we'll go ahead and we'll get back on it with our ratchet, see if we can get that to come off of there. Now we got some spray on it. There we go. That's working better. Alright, let's see if we can buzz that nut off of there with our zipper gun. And you gotta hold a little bit of tension on it when you do this with the gun. Especially if you got a nut that's being stubborn like this one. There it is. We'll save the nut because I've got a new tool that we're going to put the nut in the tool. See, you don't want to put that back on there. That's just a lot of rust. You don't want to put that back on there. But it came off and it didn't break the stud in the firewall, so we're good to go. I'm going to take this nut and I'm going to go put it in my new tool. Figure out what size it is and get a new one. Put a new nut on there. Anywhere you can put new hardware on a car, especially one that's rusted like this, you definitely want to do that. Alright, so now we got to get our, let's see, we got to get in here with our screwdriver and disconnect it from these little clamps right here. So I'll show you how we do that. These clamps, they're just little plastics. So you're gonna have to get in from behind, pull it to the side, and then pry your line forward. So, like for example, this one right down here, push that down and then pull your line out like that. Now it usually takes the whole assembly with it. We got to pull these off the firewall. These are rubber grommets. So the way these come out is you got to get in between the two layers right here. There's a clamp split right in between. You take it apart like that. It's like the GM fuel line. And then you take these clamps off and set them up there. You got to do that on this one too. There's a separation right here. Separate it from the clamps. And you can pull the rubber off from the bottom. Don't worry if they get bent, because they'll bend back. You take those off and you set them like that. And then when you get the lines loose, you take your nut, put your nut back on where it came from. That way you don't lose it. Unless you're doing this with a coffee can and you mark the coffee can for your retainer bolts. These will go in the car with the rest of the hardware. But you want to get your 2 line retaining nuts and you want to just get them on there. Now there's something really important you need to know about this job. Do not cut these lines, because if you don't have a donor car, it's easier to shape these lines if you have them intact. Plus you have to measure them, and it's hard to measure them if the lines are broke. Now there's electrical line that goes across the top here for the wiper motor. So we're going to have to figure out how to get this line out. This top line's your fuel line. So you gotta get that to come apart. These can be a little bit of a chore. You got to get them out of the retainers. There we go. That one's out. You could probably get this one out just by crawling your screwdriver up underneath here. Pry out on it, it'll pop right out, see? And then we got to get down here. And this down here is just like the ones on the rail on the top. It's inside of a bracket. You got to separate the bracket. This one's going to be a pain in the neck to get to, so I'm going to have to get a pair of pliers on it. So let me see if I have this one right here will do the job. You reach down here and you grab it right in the middle. Grab the metal and you just kind of pull back. When you get enough room between the separations, you take your screwdriver down here and you open it up like this. Sometimes it'll open right up, sometimes you got to fight it. But if this one breaks, I don't care. I'm going to tell you why. In my opinion, that one's unnecessary. Okay? It's unnecessary because you've got this connection here, you've got this connection here, you've got this one here, you got the 2 along the end there. These lines are stiff, which means that you don't need to put all this into it to get it to stay put. And this one wants to give me problems. We got to get this one opened up so we can get to the rest of it. Alright, I'm going to have to go get get one of my big rats, my screwdrivers, and a light, because it's getting dark out. Even though you guys got excellent light, I don't. So let me show you what we're working with here. You see that little rusty pile of crap right down there? That's what we're trying to open up. We got everything off the firewall we need to get off, except for that down there. When we get that done, we're going to call it an end to this part of it, because on the next part of it, we got to get the 2 brake lines loose that go to the back. And I'm not exactly sure how I'm going to do that with the limited space I've got. I don't know if we're going to be pulling the proportioning valve off the firewall, or if we're going to be pulling the throttle body off. Not real sure. But let me go get a screwdriver and a light. We're going to open that up and get them lines out of there. And then we'll see what happens. Alright, let's try something else here. There we go. Just got to push back on it to let it loose. And then we got this rubber here that goes around it. Pull that rubber back. We got our clamp opened up. We gotta get this rubber off of here now. Pull that rubber back and get these lines loose off the firewall. Alright, our fuel lines are loose off the firewall. We gotta... Okay, we can get our fuel lines out now. Now the way this is going to go, it's going to go rather ridiculous because as you can see we got a big wraparound. And I'm not exactly sure how they're going to come out of the car because we've got steering in the way. Somewhere down there is a transmission mount that's going to be in the way. I don't know why they designed it this way, but we got the same issue with the brake lines too. Because we got brake lines will be a little bit easier to navigate because they're smaller. But we got steering in the way because we got that bellows sitting right there. That's the inner tie rod on this car, and I am not taking that out. I'm not pulling the steering rack out of this car either to change these lines because that's a little bit excessive. So we've got to figure out how we're going to get past that. I guess it's going to be a lot of twisting until we get it underneath the car, and then once it's underneath the car you can just pull it right straight to the back. Nobody's ever done this that I can find, and for good reason from the looks of it. We're not going to do a cut and splice because that's not how we do things here. Every joint you put in is a leak point, and if you run a pressurized system like the fuel system, you don't want to put any more joints in it than necessary. That's why they usually run one continuous line. So when we come back here again, we're going to go after the now that we got this cleaned up here, we can get to, yeah, let's see if we can get them lines broke loose real quick. If we can get those two lines broke loose, I think we'll be in good shape. Alright, so you got to take the two lower ones off. These are the lower ones right here. And use your line wrench. I'm not exactly sure what size these are. But I think that's where we're going to stop today because it's getting dark. And I'm getting winded. So tomorrow, or part 2, we'll finish getting the lines off under the hood. Then we'll crawl under the car. See what we got to do to get the lines out from underneath the car. And see if we're going to go out to the scrap yard and get another set of lines for it. Or if we're going to just buy a bunch of line and build our own. So we'll see how that goes. So we'll see you on the next one, part 2.